cry havoc. Let's slip the dogs of war and welcome to the library. I'm your librarian Elizabeth. How can I help you? Women and femmes only. As discussed, I want to look at the issue of everyone was anti-Semitic back in the day. I would look more generally at racism, but I think that's an issue for a person of a minority ethnicity. I, as a non-Jew who cares deeply about anti-Semitism, feel I can just about get away with handling this. So what exactly is this strange argument? This odd claim that everyone was anti-Semitic back in the day? Well, it's an argument made by both right-wing chuds and liberal apologists, and it is a nonsense claim, and we are going to prove so by turning their argument against them and then finding examples from the literature. Are you ready? Let's begin. So their argument is we must understand works within their historical context. It's simply unacceptable to place modern standards upon these works. Fine. Let us take this stance, and let us then ask if we look at works not through a modern lens, but through the lens of the time, if we can find authors standing against anti-Semitism. In this first video, we are going to begin with the golden age of the English theatre and end with a bridge between the Edwardian and the modernist period. So let us begin. And oh boy, do we begin with a good one. A writer that the chuds absolutely love. William Shakespeare, second only to Homer in their eyes. They love but do not read Shakespeare. But let's look at an example of why they obviously did not read Shakespeare in a way in which Shakespeare may be said to arguing against anti-Semitism. And we're looking particularly at the character of Shylock. A somewhat infamous character, and one I studied as far back as high school. Normally understood to be a character who stands against the evils of anti-Semitism. This is a character who we are asked to sympathise with. We are asked, if you prick me, do I not bleed? And this is very much on point for some of the ways that Shakespeare handles issues such as anti-Semitism. Even though the term would not be understood by him, we see the same in The Tempest and how he views colonialism. The door opened and I got a fright. Let me just continue. The wind under the door. Yes. So The Tempest stands against colonialism to some extent and asks us to sympathise with its victims, indigenous peoples. And this, arguably, perhaps it's correct to say, if we view within this time, stands against the evils of anti-Semitism. However, authorial intent is a tricky one, because we have to then ask why this comedy, The Merchant of Venice, ends with this sympathetic Jewish character being humiliated ritually. He is sexually mutilated and forced to convert to Christianity. Well, we have a problem here, and it's a problem which will continue to plague us up until a surprisingly modern point, because authorial intent means nothing. Shakespeare may well have intended Shylock to be a character that exposes the evils of Jew hate, but at the same time, this is a character who is ritually humiliated by the end of the play. This may become a theme, and the abandonment of authorial intent may also become a theme. I want to step outside of literature and look at Marston's study of Bach, the Passion of St. John, and ask if Bach is also seeking a way through anti-Semitism to something different, because as one can point out from this period, anti-Semitism was perfectly acceptable. We need only look at Marston's study of Handel and the disgusting Jew hate that the Messiah contains. But this, Marston argues, this work by Bach, this classic of the Baroque period, this cornerstone of the classical tradition, does not argue that the Jews are not the Jews and the Jews alone who are to blame for the death of Christ, but we all are. We all have a responsibility because we are in a fallen world and we are all sinful, and Christ needed to die for our sins. This is not... Oh, my voice is terrible today. I've got a bit of a frog in my throat. But this is not me arguing that we must accept Bach's point, but we must ask if Bach's point is a second point in which we can see something beyond common anti-Semitic ideas. And finally, and most resolutely and plainly of all, we have a legendary character. A character whose work spans 3 historical and literary periods. His work, the author's work. But the character themselves does as well. This is Sherlock Holmes, by Arthur Conan Doyle, began in the Victorian period, continued in the Edwardian, and finally brought to an end in the modernist period. And this contains a fascinating character, a character who to some extent fits in with some of the ways in which Doyle attempts to see beyond the horrors of his age. I'm talking, of course, about Moriarty. Moriarty, at the height of European anti-Semitism, is a well-bred Englishman. The same is true of the antagonist in Doyle's sole and thankfully best attempt at the Egyptology horror craze of the 19th century, where again he offers us a well-bred Englishman. And there's another Doyle story from the same period which tries to understand as a white man what black rage, sorrow and grief may look like. These are all to some extent failures and can all be critiqued. But the point I want to make about all of these works is that they offer us an argument against the everyone was anti-Semitic argument. Because if some people were not, and if some people attempted to be within the confines of their own world and their own world view, then not everyone was, and there is no excuse for it.